Are you considering leasing a property here in the Bahamas? Well, before you sign on that dotted line, there are a few things you need to know. Lease agreements in the Bahamas can be quite different from what you're used to, and there are some important factors to consider. In this video, we'll cover everything you need to know about lease agreements here in the Bahamas so you can make an informed decision and avoid any potential pitfalls. So let's dive in. Hello everyone and welcome to yet another presentation on the laws of the Bahamas. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and please don't hesitate to click the like button if you've enjoyed our presentation today. Now, the lease agreement is a contract between landlord and tenant. And here in the Bahamas, both written and verbal agreements are recognized under Bahamian law. But although verbal agreements are recognized by the courts as evidence per se, I strongly believe that it is important to have a written agreement in order to ensure that the rights and obligations of both landlord and tenant are firmly established and readily enforced when needed. You can imagine the problems verbal agreements can have in a legal dispute, but if the terms and conditions were in writing, it could be easily resolved. This highlights an important element in the landlord and tenant relationship, which calls for the use of proper record keeping throughout the duration of the lease. It is very important to keep a record when noting important aspects of the landlord and tenant relationship, such as the inspection of furnishings and appliances before the start and termination of the lease, for example. Rental payments and repairs to the property are also good examples. And such records can easily be provided in the form of an invoice, payment receipt, or a statement signed by both parties. Now, keeping written record of communications between landlord and tenant is also good practice, especially when giving notice to each party with respect to varying the terms of the agreement, such as giving notice with respect to rent increases, entering the premises by the landlord, or extending the lease by the tenant. And of course, the need to effect proper notice to legally evict a tenant from the premises, which is normally conducted by the courts. This requires the landlord to demonstrate the grounds in which the eviction is sought. In this case, the court will want to examine all of your records in order to determine whether it is reasonable to evict a tenant. So in cases where a tenant can show that he had not received or had not been given enough notice to vacate the premises, or had continued to make payment towards the outstanding rent before the hearing date, the court may decide not to enforce the eviction under the circumstances, or may decide to delay it. So you can see why proper record keeping is important, all of which are dependent on the terms and conditions of the lease agreement, which often identifies the parties to the agreement, the duration of the lease, the initial deposit to be made, which is usually the total amount comprising of first and last month's rent, together with a refundable security deposit, along with penalties, which may apply to either late payments or overstaying the lease. The terms and conditions of the lease agreement would usually stipulate the obligations of the landlord and tenant, all of which depend on the circumstances of the lease. So certain agreements may require the landlord to maintain property taxes or even mortgage payments, or maintain appliances and fixtures, while the tenants are responsible for paying utility bills or other fees such as association or homeowners fees if the property is in a gated community, for example. Lease agreements are also used to govern the activities of the parties. So under certain agreements, tenants may be prohibited from keeping pets, restricted to utilizing certain allocated parking spaces, or refrain from excessive noise while on the property. So it is very important for a tenant to request a copy of the proposed agreement before renting the property so they can remain compliant with its terms and conditions. Anyways, folks, that's our show for today. If you want to watch more of our videos, you can always visit the Bahama Lawyer Studios YouTube channel, or please visit our new website at www.bahamalawyer.com for more information on legal developments here in the Bahamas. We thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for our next presentation.